Hello and welcome to another live Q&A. My name is Shakina and I work in the education team. I'm around for the next 60 minutes to answer all of your OET questions. So the format of the next 60 minutes is quite simple. If you've got a question that you'd like to ask, post it in the chat and that question will come straight through to me. So wherever you are, whether that's Facebook or YouTube, post your question in the chat and that question will come through to me. I'll work my way through the questions in the next 60 minutes and try and answer as many of them as possible. Your questions can be excuse me, anything, whether that's whether you're new to OET and you want to know a little bit more about the test, or if you've got a test coming up soon. No matter where you are in your preparation journey, no question is silly or a dumb question. Please pop it in the chat and I will try my best to answer it. Lovely. I can see we've got some questions already coming in. And hello to everyone in the chat saying hello. I have got a question here from who joins us on YouTube. MM's asking for part A reading, if the question says what percentage, should I put 30% or just 30? So if the question is asking you about percentage, you do need to put the symbol percent, because your answer is not just 30, it is 30%. So you do need to include the symbol in your answer. And I think this is a common question that we get in for reading part A. And there's a great video that I'm going to just pop in the chat and recommend to you, which is going to really shed some more light on how you can, succeed at reading part A and get all your answers accurate and correct. So I'm just going to pop that in the chat right now. And I would recommend giving this a watch. It's a short video, but there's lots of examples there, just like the one that you've shared there, lots of examples that walk you through, and you'll be able to understand a little bit more. Great. Excuse me. So I've got here a question from Basil, who joins us on YouTube. And Basil's asking, how can I improve my skills in the writing subtest section? I find it the most difficult part. So writing is one of the 4 subtests. And in the writing section, you're writing a letter to another healthcare professional. It's the letter and the case notes that you'll see are profession specific. So if it's nursing, if you're a nurse taking the test, you would receive nursing case notes. If you're a doctor, you'd receive medicine case notes, and so on. So they're profession specific. So that should reassure you a little bit. It's something that you would be quite sort of familiar with the scenarios there, and you should feel comfortable with that. In terms of skills, the first thing I could recommend is that you focus on um, writing or communicating um, something that is relevant to your reader. And what I mean by that is that you need to keep your reader top of mind as you select the case notes and as you organize your letter. What I'm going to do is I'm going to recommend another great resource. And this is something that you're going to find on the writing page of the OET website. We have on OET.com the learn pages, and the learn pages, there's a page dedicated to each part, each subtest. On the writing page you will find the writing guide, and the writing guide walks you through the criteria, the assessment criteria, and what the assessors are looking for in your letter. So it demystifies it, it makes it simple through examples, so that you understand really what skills you need to work on. So, Basil, I would recommend that you visit the writing page of the OET website, on which you'll find the writing guide and plenty more great advice there. All right. Um, I've got a question here from Telegram at the Common Hype on YouTube, joining from YouTube. And this question is about reading part C. Can I get some tips? Because in 2 weeks, they have their test. So, with reading part C, I'm going to just give you a few quick tips that you could try as you're practicing. The first step is that you manage your time. So, reading parts B and C are together. You have 45 minutes to complete both parts. So, it's a good idea to, when you're practicing, divide your time efficiently between parts B and part C, part B and part C. We sort of recommend you take about 10 to 12 minutes to do part B, all the 6 questions in part B, and then you have the rest of the time, which is about 35 minutes, and then you split the 35 equally between the two passages, the reading part C passages. Keeping ahead and managing your time is essential, because if you find that you're spending too much time on one passage or one question, you can always come back to it later. But it's important to sort of work your way through the questions in that time. The second tip is to try and find evidence for all the options. When you are reading, you would it's easy to be distracted by the answer options. So it's a good idea, once you've selected your if you've got your answer selected, you find why you've selected the right answer, but you could also um, f- find evidence in the text for why the other answers are incorrect. And it's important you do this so that you can be confident that you've selected the right answer. And the third tip is that, this is something you could try, which is not to be distracted by the answer options. It's sometimes useful to kind of cover the answer options, read the question, go to the text, and try and answer the question without looking at the answer options. Then you can uncover the answer options and select the answer that you think, that sort of matches what your answer was. So this is a method you could try, and see how it works for reading part C. All right, we've got some more questions coming in. All right. Right. So I've got here a question or comment by Adam, who joins us on YouTube. Adam saying part A listening is checked by the computer. Part A listening and part A reading are both checked by human assessors. So at least two human assessors mark part A of both reading and listening. Parts B and C are computer marked. Anu Thomas asks on YouTube, can we use connectives like owing to? Yes, you can use that connective or that word to or that phrase to join ideas. And again, connectors is a question that we get asked quite a lot. So I'm just going to be posting in the chat um, a really great blog that we've written that gives you lots more examples and example sentences of the kinds of connectors you can use, and some which might not be appropriate for the test. So I'm just popping that in the chat now to have a look, Anu. And okay, I've got some more questions coming in. So I've got a question from Anum Rahim, who joins us on YouTube. Asks what are the total marks of OET, and how much do we have to secure to pass? So I'll sort of answer your question in two parts. OET is scored. There are two kinds of scores that you receive in OET when you get your result. The first is a numerical score, which is from 0 to 500 for all the subtests, and the other is a letter grade. And the letter grade and the numerical scores correspond. So what happens is the the passing score, however, for the passing score is determined not by OET, it is determined by the regulator that you're applying to. So, what we would recommend is that you check with on the website of the regulator that of the country you are looking to apply to. For example, the UK, you have the NMC. Check on their website to see what OET scores are required for you to successfully apply. Now, generally speaking, though, most regulators and uh, most bodies, authorities, the passing score is an OET grade B, which is a score of 350. That is considered passing for most. But like I said, do check with your regulators because there can be variations. When you go to their website, you'll usually see the letter grade listed and the numerical score as well. And just on a similar note, Fairshell on YouTube's asking how many marks do we need to get to pass in the reading module? So in the reading module, you have a total of 42 marks. What we recommend is that you aim to score 30, 31, 32, or 30, 33. So in the sort of low 30s is what we recommend. However, it's always a good idea when you're practicing with official papers, when you're practicing to score, to aim much higher, aim above that so that you can feel confident that you're on the right track to getting your B in reading. The reason why there's not one fixed passing score or passing mark is that each time there is a new test written for reading and for listening. The level of challenge of each test can vary slightly, and so the grade boundaries or the passing marks, if you could call it that, vary slightly between test to test, and therefore the grade boundaries do change. So there is perhaps so with that in mind, and that is done to keep it fair for all candidates writing the test at any point. So with that in mind, we recommend, as I said, the low 30s. Always good to aim for more. Make sure you're practicing with official materials, though. What often happens is if you practice with unofficial materials and you're still getting that score, uh, if you're getting, you're getting, like I said, between 30 and 33, um, with unofficial materials, those aren't a great representation of the test. They could mislead you. So you might be scoring high in those materials, but not scoring. But then when you go on test day, you could be really surprised, and we don't want that to happen. So we recommend that you visit the sample tests for listening. So I'm just going listening and reading. So I'm just going to post in the chat there the page to our sample tests, and I would recommend practice with these, um, and then the advice that I gave would would be accurate. All right. So just moving on. All right, I've got some questions here. I've got a question from Betty. Betty, excuse me. Betty's asking for the listening subtest. Could you please explain about the importance of articles, whether it's important to write articles? So, generally, Betty, if you look at the official sample tests on the website, you'll see that articles are generally optional, which means that they can be a part of your which means that you could include them or you could leave them out. They're optional. You don't need to worry about them. Remember that the information that we are looking for in listening part A is the information that is needed to complete the healthcare professional's notes. So that information is definitely what you need to focus on. You don't need to worry too much about articles in your answers. Write what you hear, um, and that should be enough. That should be your focus. Okay. I'm just going to look for some questions. Okay, I've got a question here from a candidate on YouTube. Apologies, I'm not able to pronounce that name, but thank you for your question. The question is, could you please provide some tips and strategies to get a higher score in listening part A? And how can I prepare well for it? Absolutely. I will share some tips for listening part A. So, listening part A is a consultation between a healthcare professional and a patient. Excuse me. And what you need to complete are the notes of the healthcare professional, and you need to complete them with something that the patient says. When you look at the question paper, you'll see that there are headings and subheadings sometimes. Um, and it's a good idea to use the reading time that you have, the 30 seconds before the audio plays, to read those headings, and sort of understand the flow of the conversation and to help you to keep your place. The next thing is, again, during your reading time, it's a good idea to look at the notes and anticipate the kind of answer might uh, that might be needed in that gap. So what I mean by that is, sometimes from the notes you can understand whether, it's a symptom that's required in the gap, whether it's a part of the body that's required, whether it's a treatment that you need to listen for. And so that, again, like I said, in the reading time, it's a good idea to kind of anticipate that kind of information so that you feel prepared when the audio starts. And the last step is to write only one answer. In listening, you need only to write what you hear. You don't need to write anything else, and only one answer will be required. A word or a short phrase will be required in the gap. All right. So I've got a question from Christine. Christine joins us on YouTube. And Christine asks, in speaking, is it okay to say the examples given in the role play card, or do we need to cite some examples other than those given in the role play card? So, Christine, you don't need to give any other examples. Those examples that are given in brackets and the supporting information that's given in the brackets should be sufficient for you to carry out your conversation with the patient. Now, if that doesn't mean that you can't say anything else outside of that, if you feel yes, you could have another example there, you could use that. But again, with caution that you don't go off topic, or you don't say something irrelevant. So as long as you're careful about that. However, like I said, there's enough information, supporting information in the brackets for you to be able to carry out the conversation. So I'd encourage you to use those examples. Right. All right. Got some questions again about articles, and that I've just answered. All right, I've got a question here from Kuku, who joins us on Facebook. And Kuku asks, in the listening subtests, minor spelling mistakes, will they be accepted or not? Whether the answer will come in long answers, juvenile rheumatoid arthritis. Please provide some tips to improve listening. So, Kuku, for the listening subtest, we encourage you to be as accurate as possible with your spelling. Obviously, if so, the focus is that when you're thinking about spelling in the listening subtest, like I said, aim to be as accurate as possible, especially for words that are, medical words that are commonly known to the medical community, but also to patients. So, for example, words like cholesterol, high blood pressure. These are some examples of words. Protein. These are examples of words that everyone would be quite familiar with, and so those words, yes, you would be expected to spell those correctly. There is a little bit of flexibility, however, with with other words, and it's a good idea, perhaps, if you're struggling with your spelling, to make a personal checklist of words that you get commonly, you misspell commonly, and work on off of that checklist to improve your spelling. Will the answer come in long answers? So the you're expected to write a word or a short phrase, so that's what we would expect. The example that you've provided, I'm not sure of the context. I haven't seen or heard the audio, but what we would encourage you is to write what you hear. write what you hear in the audio, and that should actually be sufficient. Tips for listening. One tip that perhaps that I can recommend for listening is just to do a little bit more listening outside of OET practice tests. There are some great resources out there, and I'm just going to post in the chat um, our listening page, which has lots of great articles and links to resources that you can use. All right, I've got a question here from Eurocare with Dr. Sajad Ahmed. The listening modules on the internet are sometimes slow or buffering. In the real test, is it fast or audible and good? Can you understand it? Because so many candidates are not used to fast listening in routine. So, this is a question that is sort of I think you're right. There is definitely a lot of anxiety often about the speed of the audio, but rest assured that the speed of the audio that you will hear in the listening in official materials and in the test as well is of course natural speed, but that speed has been adjusted to keep in mind the test taking scenario and the test taking situation. So it has been adjusted so that you will be able to answer those questions. If you're finding that you're struggling with the speed of the speakers, what that probably means is that you need to do a little bit more listening and you need to work on your listening skills. Um, so it's a good idea to um, maybe if those audios are quite fast, take a step back and really find out a little bit more about where your level is in terms of your listening skills, and work your way up to that faster audio. All right. And about yep. And so obviously, when you are using unofficial material, sometimes that's uploaded. Um, yes, that could be slow. It could be buffering. We're unable to comment on that, but if you do use our sample tests, you'll get an idea of the kind of speed you'd expect. Right. I've got some questions here. Um, got a question here from Janet on writing. When writing purpose, do we need to write any point from the discharge plan, like the change of the dressing, in the introduction paragraph? Is it important or can it be written as continuing care? So, Janet, when you write your paragraph, that is the introduction paragraph, you want to give your reader a quick sort of high level overview of what the purpose is, and address you want to give them an idea very quickly of the important things that they need to do. There might be certain details like changing of dressings, but you should be able to see from the notes, you should be able to gather what the purpose is quite clearly. That will be made clear. Um, Whether you use a generic phrase like continuing care, if that is appropriate to the case notes, if that's appropriate and in the notes, definitely. um, You could use that. But in addition to that, like I said, you need to give the reader an idea of what they're supposed to do. When they read the first paragraph of your letter, they need to understand why they have been asked to intervene or to take to take care of the patient. What's their role in the patient's care? Of course, that would be continuing care, but you need to also just provide you need to provide some clear overview of that, of the kind of care that they need. So look, yes, you could you there's definitely things in the discharge plan, in the notes, in the last section, and in the writing task, these three places where you would find the purpose of the letter. um, if changing dressing was the main thing that needed to be done for the patient, and if there were complications around it, and if that was really the focus of the care, yes, then that would be included. But if that's one of the things related to the main purpose, then you don't need to include that. So it's important to read the case notes carefully, understand really what the patient needs, what's them, and what the reader's supposed to do for them, and then that's how you can make a judgment on what you need to include in your purpose paragraph. All right, Alma's got a question here. How would we know that the videos we're watching in YouTube for our review are official? Now, if you've subscribed to our YouTube channel, which I encourage you do, if you haven't already, or if you've liked us on Facebook, those are really the only two channels where we stream videos and we upload videos, and that you can say are official. There might be a lot of videos floating around, maybe even with the logo, but when you can trace the video back to our official page, and our official channel on YouTube, that's when you know that those videos are genuine. Okay, I've got some newer questions. I've got a question here from Sunita. Sunita's asking, how can we get extra materials from official OET? So, Sunita, we've recently got a really great grade 4 courses on our website. We've launched on the official store, which is our reading skills course, our listening skills course, our writing skills course, and our speaking skills course. These courses you can find on our shop on the OET store, and there's a lot of material there, extra practice, but also some great activities that you could do as part of these courses. Also on the store are other materials, other books. So you have our official practice test books, which contain 3 subtests for uh, all the professions. And also, there's also newly launched books like the OET Trainer, which contains an additional 6 practice tests. So head to the store after this, and you will find lots more practice materials there. All right. So I've got a question here about commas from Mariam on YouTube, and Mariam's put in a sentence there. I'm writing to refer Mr. Harry, who has been diagnosed with pneumonia, comma, requires ongoing management at your service. Can we use a comma before requires like this? So, Mariam, it's important. The thing with commas is it's important to remember that while there are rules for commas, um, it really depends on the sentence that you're writing. So, when you're trying to learn about commas, instead of thinking about fixed sentences, like for example, before requires, I need a comma before requires, it's a good idea to learn the rules and then see how you apply those rules through practice of those rules. You might need to work with the teacher to understand that, but it really depends on the sentence. So commas really depend on the sentence that you're writing. In your sentence, you definitely uh, don't need a comma, but you need something that is between pneumonia and requires. So you could say, I'm writing to refer Mr. Harry, who's been diagnosed with pneumonia and requires ongoing management. So that would be a better way to write the sentence than use a comma over there. All right. Okay, I've got a question here from Chulufia on YouTube, and they're asking, in OET speaking, am I allowed to write the name of the patient on the card during the 5 minutes speaking time? So, Chulafia, what we would recommend is, if you have trouble remembering the name of the patient. So, for example, if the interlocutor has given you a name, or if you've asked the name at the beginning of the role play, you could definitely note down the name. But it's rather than focusing on that, what we would recommend is that you carry on the conversation as normally as you would. Um, for example, if you've if you're a, s- you know if you're struggling to remember the name of the patient, you can just carry on as normally. There's n- you know it's not sort of a fatal mistake for you to forget the name of the patient. So just relax and continue as normal. You can make notes during the 3 minutes preparation time, but after that, we recommend that you focus on the conversation with your patient during the 5 minutes. So, not to write down anything, but focus on talking to them and carrying out the conversation. And as I said, don't worry about whether you've forgotten the name or not. Okay, I've got a question from Joan, who joins us on YouTube. Joan's saying, I would like to ask regarding listening and reading part A, can we answer all the questions in capital letters? So, yes, Joan, if you are doing the paper based version of the test and you would like to use all caps for reading and listening part A, you can go ahead and do that. However, we recommend that you use it consistently so that your handwriting is legible, the assessors can understand what you've written, and using it consistently is a good idea to help that. In If you're writing the computer based version of the test, what we suggest is that you type normally, so using capital letters where there's capital letters required and smaller letters where you need to use smaller letters. You don't We would not recommend all caps if you're doing the computer based version. Paper based, yes, you can, but use it consistently. All right. I've got here some questions that have just come in, some new questions. Okay, I've got a question from Mohammed. In reading a part, the time is very limited. Will OET overlook this policy, restricted time, and make some changes, such as increasing the time up to 20 minutes? So I think you are talking about reading part A, which you need to answer 20 questions in 15 minutes. So if I take a few steps back and just think about the context, the workplace context of reading part A. And what I mean by that is what the kind of reading that you would do in your workplace that is reflected in reading part A. Now, this kind of reading is everyday reading that you would do, on the ward when you're interacting with patients. It's the kind of reading that you need to do efficiently and quickly, and therefore there is that time limit to sort of simulate that workplace situation. When regulators accept to when regulators accept OET as proof of language proficiency for working in their country, they want to make sure that someone who is at the level that is required can actually work in the workplace, um, and they have those skills to work in the workplace. So it's something that has not been pulled out of a hat. So the 15 minutes there is not designed to make the test difficult. It's not designed to trip you up or to add extra pressure. It's actually designed to mimic what the kind of reading that you would do in the workplace. And so if you think about it from that perspective, if you're looking at improving your skills for reading part A, that's actually a really good investment of your time, because when you go on to the real workplace in your destination country, that is the kind of reading under that kind of pressure that you'll have to do. Um, All right. So Chagadam on YouTube's asking, can you give 3 tips for OET paper-based tests? Because I haven't seen anybody talking about the paper-based type of test till now. So Jagatam, um, if you want to write the paper-based version of the test, perhaps one tip that I could share is that, and for anyone wanting to make a choice about the kind of mode that they want to write the test in, whether that's paper based or computer based, it's important to use the mode that you feel comfortable in. So if you're better at typing, for example, maybe a computer based could be the better option for you. But if you feel sort of more confident about writing, then that could be the right option for you. One tip that so that's perhaps the best tip that I can give. In in terms of the test itself, the parts of the test, in terms of the questions, the difficulty level, it's all the same. So, whether you're writing the computer based or the paper based version of the test, all the skills and all the strategies and tips are the same. I'm going to pop in the chat the learn pages of the OET website. Now, on the learn pages, you're going to find a lot of tips and strategies. And like I said, these are common for all. Just give me a second there. All right. Just looking for some questions there to see if there's any that I've missed, um, that I could answer before I move to some newer questions. So I've got a question here from Ria, and Ria's on YouTube asking, "Can you please tell me about clubbing scores?" Now, clubbing, for those of you who've asked in the chat, and also those of you probably wondering what clubbing is a term that's used to talk about combining two scores from two different test sittings. So, for example, if you've done the test in January and you've got another test result in May, you there is a possibility that's allowed by some regulators where you can combine the two scores, so that you can with those two combination of those two scores, you have a score that is acceptable by the regulator. So, for example, if you've got all of your scores except reading in January, and then later on in May, if you've got um, you, if you've done better in reading and maintained consistently your scores in the other subtests to the acceptable level, then you can combine and use the reading score, for example, from the later test. So that's what clubbing is. It's combining scores. Now, what I would recommend is that if you are interested or if you feel like you can club your scores, it's something that you would need to check with the regulator that you're applying to. So, for example, the NMC, which is the Nursing and Midwifery Council in the UK, they accept a certain clubbing of scores under different criteria. So, what we would recommend is that you go to their website and check out the rules around clubbing and whether your scores could potentially be accepted. Your combining of the scores could be accepted. That's not something that we decide as OET, it's something that the regulator decides. So go over there, have a look, and there's some helpful tools a lot of times to help you, and examples to help you decide if your score could be eligible for clubbing. I've got some newer questions that I am scrolling down to. Um, and a lot of questions on reading parts B and C, listening parts B and C. So earlier in the session, I've just given some tips on reading part C. And so what I might just do is give you some tips on listening part C. So we've got some tips there. With listening part C, you hear two different audios, about 5 minutes each. And you have about 90 seconds before the audio starts. Each audio starts. That is your reading time. Now, when you have reading time, it's if often you might get nervous and anxious about what's going to happen and what you're going to hear. But actually, reading the questions and the context sentence that's provided at the beginning of the questions is really a good way to anticipate and to sort of prepare your mind for what you're going to hear. So use those 90 seconds effectively. Read the context sentence, think about what you might hear, read the questions, and identify. You might want to underline some keywords there to help you focus while you're to help you focus while you're listening. So using that reading time effectively is key. when you are listening, it's important to keep your focus. Now, it might be easy to say, but what you can do to prepare to keep your focus is actually to build up your stamina for listening. The test is about 40 minutes long, so that is a long time to be listening with, deep concentration like you are, and sort of in a very high stakes situation. So when you are practicing for your test, it's a good idea to listen for the kind of length of time that you would listen in the listening subtest. So practice listening for long periods, and focusing and concentrating for all of, the 40 minutes that you're listening to something. That will help you to build up your stamina and help you to keep your focus. um, if you miss out on a question, don't worry, move on to the next question with the audio. You can move on because the next question will be clear. So in an interview, usually the next question is indicated with the interviewer asking the speaker or the guest the next question. So then you know it's time to move on to the next question. Don't worry about the previous question. If it's a presentation, usually the speaker will cue or use some words that indicate that they're moving on to the next topic. For example, that would be the next question. And so this will be clearly given in the words of the question, and so you need to just move on along with that. Don't worry so much about something that you've missed. Keep going, and aim to get, maybe you can't get all of the answers right, but aim to get as many right as possible. All right. um, I would just putting up a question there from Mohammed, sort of a statement. Mohammed saying, I will only receive marks, high, low, or same marks rather than proper feedback. So, Mohammed, I think for because you've spoken about feedback there, what we would suggest is that it's always a good idea while you're preparing for writing to get your writing assessed by someone who um, is a trained teacher, and sort of someone who's gone through the rigorous checks and the training that OET provides for teachers. And those are our premium and preliminary preparation providers, and you can find them online on our website. And I'm going to post in the chat um, you know a page where you can find a preparation provider that is near you or online. Now, why we would recommend getting feedback from these official preparation providers is because they're trained to give you the writing feedback based on the writing criteria, the speaking feedback based on the speaking criteria. There could be a lot of people offering feedback, but it's important that you get your feedback from the teachers who have, spent time being trained to give this kind of feedback. So I'd recommend, visiting our preparation providers page, finding a preparation provider that you feel comfortable with, that suits you. A lot of them do offer just feedback services, so just writing feedback or just speaking feedback. So do visit that page and have a look, because it's important more than just the marks, to understand where you've made your mistakes, why it's a mistake based on the writing criteria, and how you can improve. And that's how you will sort of be able to improve, just by sort of looking at marks, or that kind of sort of numbers there. That's not going to really help you or tell you much. It's the feedback that you'll get from a trained teacher that's going to help you improve. Right. So I've got a question here from Cheryl. Cheryl is joins us on YouTube and asking, if I didn't finish listening part A, I think on time, is it allowed to go back to it when I finish part three early? So I think, Cheryl, it's important when you listening to focus on that part that you are listening. If you're worried about finishing part C earlier, because you want to go back to part A, that actually might be, that might mean that you lose focus in part C and you could lose some precious marks there. What I would recommend is that, yes, in your 2 minutes that you have at the end for the paper based test, you can go back to part A to check your spelling. That's where a lot of mistakes are often made. So go back and check your spelling. Uh, but when you are listening, try, focus on that so that you write what you hear. What can happen is, if you go back and change your answers, maybe, you could change your answers, they could be right, but what could also happen is that you could because if you're using your memory to change your answers or to make any adjustments, then that could actually impact your answer. So focus on listening, and when you are focusing on that particular part of the test, don't worry about the other parts. And yes, use your reading, your time at the end, to correct your spellings. Just looking for some newer questions here. All right. I've got maybe time just for a couple of questions. I've got some lovely message here from Anna Lakshmi, who says they successfully cleared OET last month, and thank you, Rebecca, Shakina, and all the official OET premium providers. Thank you all. Well done, Anna Lakshmi. We're really happy to hear of your success, and wish you all the very best. All right. I've got, I can see one question here that I would perhaps just take up before I tell you a little bit more about some exciting events coming up. Right. So I've got a question here from Bigyani on YouTube, and can you please elaborate more on ISBA? Now, ISBA is sort of a common um, way of reporting information that's used in the medical world. You can definitely, it's a great tool to use when you are writing, or when, say, you're doing a handover in speaking in the workplace. It's a great tool to use. However, if you'd like to use it for the writing subtest, and that's often a question that candidates have, is, can I use ISPA? It's a good tool, perhaps, to practice with. But when you're writing, and when you're really focusing on how you want to improve your writing, it's you don't really want to focus on using templates. If you're using ISBA like a template, it's perhaps not a great idea, because each set of case notes is different and unique, and you would need to use a different style of organization, a style of select, and different case notes that you'd select to communicate information. So there is not a single template. Do what I'm going to do is just post in the writing pages of the learn pages, the writing page of the on the learn pages, which actually has our ultimate guide to writing, and that will give you a bit more insight into the writing criteria, as I've said earlier. And that's a really good tool to help you prepare. Um, so I'm just posting that in the chat there. All right, so we've come to the end of our session. I'm just going to put up on there the next live Q&A, which is on Wednesday, the 13th of December at the same time, which is 6 p.m. India time, 1:30 in the UK, 1:30 Nigeria, 4:30 in Dubai, and 8:30 in the Philippines. So you can join me on the 13th of December again, at this very same time. Um, if if you're following us on YouTube and um, on social media channels, you will know that in December we have um, a really exciting event coming up, and that is Listening Week. Now, Listening Week is going to run from the 4th of December to the 8th of December. So that's one whole week where we're going to give you a lot more strategies and tips to help you pass the listening subtest. We've also got a new sample test for listening, which you can download um, from the Listening Week page. So I'm just posting that in the chat. When you visit this page, you'll find the link to the sample test that you can download. You can attempt the questions, and then when you come and join us during Listening Week, we'll share the answers there. So do join us for Listening Week. Make sure you've subscribed or liked us on Facebook so that you can keep getting updates for the event. So we look forward to seeing you there or at the next Q&A. Thank you. Bye for now.